Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're demystifying Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. We are going to completely reframe how you think about your own actions. You see, human behavior isn't just a blind reaction. It's a highly dynamic, self-directed process. And why does this matter right now? Well, in our modern era of influencers and constant digital consumption, understanding exactly how our brains are programmed by what we watch is literally more crucial than ever before.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with how psychology broke away from strict behaviorism, move right into observational learning, explore the triadic framework, dive into the absolute core engine of self-efficacy, and finally, look at how you can apply these tools in the real world.
But before we jump into the first section, I want you to ask yourself this really intriguing question. How much of your daily behavior, the goals you set, the way you cross your arms, even the specific phrases you use when you're angry, is actually learned from simply watching other people? The answer might completely surprise you. Let's start with Section 1, Beyond the Black Box, Behaviorism versus Cognition. To really grasp Bandura's genius, we first need to look at the traditional behaviorist view of psychology that he was up against.
For a long time, the absolute dominant force in psychology was strict behaviorism. Think of B.F. Skinner's rats or Ivan Pavlov's dogs. These traditional behaviorists essentially treated the human mind like a locked black box. They believed you put a stimulus in and you get a response out. They didn't really care about what happened inside the mind. It was kind of like treating a human being as a biological vending machine, right? You drop a coin in and a specific behavior pops out. But Bandura completely rejected this. He argued, no way. Humans are not just biological machines reacting blindly to our environment. Instead, there's a crucial mediational process happening. We actively process, evaluate, and interpret the input before we decide on our output. We are active information processors, constantly evaluating our circumstances before we make a move.
And that realization brings us to Section 2, Observational Learning and Modeling, featuring the famous Bobo doll. What's super interesting about this part is how a single experiment in 1961 completely upended our understanding of how kids learn.
Bandura's groundbreaking Bobo doll experiment was elegant, but the results were incredibly profound. Just imagine this setup. Children were brought into a room and watched an adult behaving aggressively toward an inflatable Bobo doll. But this wasn't just a generic shove. The adults were taking a mallet and striking the doll, tossing it up in the air, and yelling very specific aggressive phrases at it. Later, those exact same children were placed in a room alone with the doll. And the shocking moment was that they didn't just play roughly, they precisely mimicked the exact novel behaviors and words they had witnessed. They picked up the mallets, they yelled the same phrases. They didn't need to be personally rewarded or punished to learn the behavior. This proved definitively that learning happens vicariously. We learn simply by watching the actions of others.
This builds directly into Bandura's ARM model. These are the 4 crucial mediational processes required for imitation to actually occur. First up is attention. The model has to be interesting enough for you to notice in the first place. Second, retention. You have to symbolically code and remember the behavior in your mind. Third is reproduction. You must have the physical and mental ability to actually do it. As the sources note, a 90-year-old watching ice skating might retain the routine perfectly, but realistically they won't be able to reproduce it. And fourth is motivation. You have to actually want to do it. Bandura later proved this by showing that if a child watched the aggressive adult get strictly scolded, instead of ignored or praised, the child's motivation to imitate the aggression dropped entirely.
So the crucial point here is that we don't just learn from people standing right in front of us. Yes, there's the live model like a parent, a peer, or a teacher, but there is also the verbal instructional model, where we learn by listening to descriptions or instructions. And perhaps most powerfully today, the symbolic model. We are profoundly influenced by media, books, movies, video games, and the internet. Think about influencer culture for a second. Think about how massive an impact a curated social media feed or a popular YouTube channel has on shaping cultural norms, fashion trends, and what we fundamentally consider normal behavior. The symbolic model is quietly programming us every single day.
Now we're expanding from how we learn to why we act. In Section 3, the Triadic framework explained. Let's explore a revolutionary concept called reciprocal determinism.
Before Bandura, a lot of folks thought that the environment simply dictated human behavior. Full stop. But reciprocal determinism completely shatters that linear view. It defines a highly dynamic, bidirectional cycle. It means your personal factors, like your thoughts, emotions, and biology, your behavior, and your environment all actively shape each other. For decades, science essentially told us we were prisoners of our environment. Bandura gave us the key to break out.
Instead of a one-way street where the environment controls you, this framework reveals a continuous, empowering feedback loop of influence where you have profound agency.
Let's break down those 3 nodes. You have personal factors like your internal beliefs, environmental factors like your physical surroundings and peers, and behavioral factors, which are your actual choices. To see this in action, imagine a workplace setting. Let's say a manager makes a conscious, proactive behavioral choice to be highly collaborative and open to feedback. That specific behavior immediately changes their environment, right? It creates a high-trust team dynamic where employees feel safe speaking up. That newly supportive environment then feeds right back into the manager's personal node, reinforcing their own confidence in their leadership skills. You aren't just a product of your environment, you are an active producer of it.
This brings us perfectly into Section 4, Self-Efficacy, the core engine. This is truly the emotional and motivational heart of Bandura's work. Self-efficacy is your fundamental, unwavering belief in your own capability to organize and execute a behavior successfully, and it's fueled by 4 main sources. First, performance accomplishments, which are basically your past successes. Second, vicarious experiences, like seeing someone similar to you achieve a goal. Third is verbal persuasion. Think of a mentor looking you dead in the eye right before a big presentation and telling you, "You've got this." And fourth is your emotional arousal. For instance, interpreting a racing heart as excitement and readiness rather than paralyzing fear. When these 4 sources feed into high self-efficacy, the effects are absolutely massive. It directly dictates the choices you make, how much effort you invest, your persistence through tough obstacles, and your overall emotional resilience.
But we have to make a really vital distinction here. Think about your own past New Year's resolutions. You knew the outcome was good, right? But did you truly deeply believe you had the efficacy to pull it off? That perfectly illustrates the critical difference between outcome expectations and self-efficacy expectations. You might know that quitting smoking will lead to a great outcome, like significantly better health. But if your self-efficacy is low, meaning you don't believe you specifically can handle the withdrawal symptoms, you probably won't even try. True behavior change requires both the desire for the outcome and the deep, unwavering belief in your own capability to actually get there.
So how do we take all of this incredibly powerful theory and make it useful? Let's move to Section 5, Real-World Applications and Therapy, to see social cognitive theory in action. Because Bandura recognized that humans are highly agentic, meaning we can proactively change our circumstances, these cognitive principles are actively applied everywhere today. In the workplace, we use shadowing and mentorship because we know observational learning builds employee confidence. In public health, interventions for smoking cessation focus heavily on breaking down tasks to build up a patient's self-efficacy step by step. And in clinical psychology, therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy rely heavily on these exact concepts. If a therapist is treating the patient with a severe spider phobia, they don't just sit and talk about it, they use guided mastery and modeling. They might start by having the patient safely watch a model interact with a spider from across the room, gradually building the patient's self-efficacy step by step until they can confidently do it themselves. It is all about empowering people by fundamentally shifting their cognitive beliefs. We've covered a lot of ground today, moving from the shocking mimicry of the Bobo doll to the incredible, life-changing power of self-efficacy. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to consider. If your environment shapes you, but your behaviors and thoughts also shape your environment, what will you choose to change today? Remember, according to Bandura, you are not just a passive observer. You are the active architect of your own life. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.